Yeah, so it's great to be here. Great to see so much interest from the audience here today. We've got a highly relevant session. Really going to explore the concept of Salesforce data dictionaries. Not a new concept, but one that's been kind of a missing link in the Salesforce ecosystem for quite a bit. And maybe now more than ever, there's a variety of ways by which you might think you can solve the problem. And so we'll kind of go through what is the problem? Is there a problem? And then talk through some of the considerations, whether you decide to build it yourself approach, the old roll your own, or an automated approach that provides more scale. And so, Dadrian, you're with us, so that's good. The audience is still with us. Cool. And so as we go into it, just a couple of contextual pieces. So we'll keep it a live session and interactive. There were a couple questions that came in advance. But as you're listening to the topic here today or the discussion, if you have specific items, feel free to interject. We want to make it as useful for you as we can. At the end of the 30 minutes here, we hope everyone gets a couple of nuggets that they can take back to their organization and help make progress. Logistics, again, we'll keep it interactive. We will have a Q&A at the end, but feel free to put Q&A in the chat and I'll try to monitor best I can. And at the end of the day, we'll try to make this as action-packed 20-30 minutes as we can. And so I think that's everything. So Dadrian, great to have you with us today. Be great for you to share a little bit about your background, what informs your perspective for those that don't already know you.
Sure. Thanks, Brian. My name is Dadrian Eason. I've been the customer success lead here at Arovy we're coming up on a year. So glad to be here. I'm based again, if you don't know, sunny San Diego. It's a lovely day. Um, we've been doing these webinars for quite a while. This is actually the first one that I've sat in on, but I speak to customers all day, every day. So I'm glad to be here and kind of be able to add my perspective in how we're building out data dictionaries, both how people have done it, in the past and how we're hoping to do it, here in 2026 and beyond. So uh, glad to be here.
Yeah, great. Yeah, great to have you with us. And I should have asked earlier when we spoke, but beautiful here in San Diego, but there are some fires. Unfortunately, I know there was the one in Sereno Valley over the weekend that the crews shut down pretty quickly. Just David, or is the one down in Chula Vista from last night affecting you or near you?
It hasn't. It's still been super pleasant. Still enjoying
Cool.
end of the summer. We're just looking at the effects this El Nino is supposed to have coming up on late fall, early winter. But other than that, still loving living down here in Paradise, Southern
Cool.
California.
Beautiful, beautiful. And I think we're going to kick off a poll before we get started, or as we get started, just to set try to get some feedback from the audience as a whole. And for those, maybe just real quick for those that don't know Arovy already, what we do is we help customers unleash the power of Salesforce and converting metadata context into a strategic asset, enabling your stakeholders to be successful, whether they be your business constituents, your analytics engines, or your AI. We've been around for quite a bit, and if you haven't checked us out, arovy.com, follow us on LinkedIn. Email deliverability is a moving target right now, so connect with myself and Dadrian if you care to stay informed. And let's see if that poll. So who's responsible for your company's data dictionary? Dadrian, what if it's not ended as of yet, who do you think is who's typically responsible? What are the things that you hear with the folks that we're working with?
Well, that's kind of one of the major uh I'd say major points is like who's in charge of this? We've got our Salesforce admins. We've depending on the size of the organization, you might be mid-size, you might be enterprise, and it's like kind of all over the place. You have a person who's been assigned to kind of oversee or lead a project, and then you've got the team under them, and it's like trying to divvy up the responsibilities and get it all under one umbrella, one accord, and make sense of it. So, who's actually in charge? Who's handling this is one of the big topics for who building out a data dictionary.
100%. And I'm pulling up the results, and it looks like we do have, the right folks for today's topic. Of the audience, 57% are responsible for the Salesforce Data Dictionary. So self-identify as the owner. Like you mentioned, Adrian, there's 29% that said nobody owns it, which is something we hear often as well. And then smorgasbord, 7 and 9% between the data governance team and other. And um, so yeah, that's super helpful, and we'll keep that in mind as we go through it. We will share the slide deck. Saw a question that came in. But maybe let's go into the kind of why now, and why the need for a data dictionary now. This is a study that came out of MIT. AI. There's a lot of companies that are having AI initiatives, and analytics initiatives have been around for Salesforce for a bit, and maybe have struggled as well. But AI initiatives are now coming to a similar foundation where your company, your executives, your organization, everyone's moving towards AI. How do we go faster? How do we scale? How do we leverage automation to deliver more value to our customers? And this report said that 95% of the enterprise AI initiatives are failing. And the reality is, it's not because of lack of prioritization. It's not because there's not an owner. It's not because it hasn't been deemed important. The reality is these projects are failing because the foundation is missing. And that metadata context is a key input to that foundation to enable your AI initiatives to really grow and successfully grow, and from seedling to tree and flowers and all those types of things. And so that's is one of the big drivers for why people are investing time in solving their AI data. They're solving their data dictionary gap today. And if we go to the next slide, maybe explaining it a little bit more. And when we talk about, again, data dictionaries have been around for a long time. Data catalogs have been around for a long time across IT and various systems. So what is it? A data dictionary from Salesforce. So you take your Salesforce data, you translate that into an accurate business context that then gets all the knowledge that's in people's heads and makes it available to people that are not Salesforce experts. So that maybe your marketing leaders, your sales leaders, your executive teams, your data analytics leaders in the past, which are human stakeholders, would want that context and not have to ask Dadrian. And now your AI and LLMs need that same context. And so the key thing of kind of the value and the need for the data dictionary is taking all that knowledge that sits inside someone's head. And that could be Dadrian, because I'm looking at you now. And I love asking Dadrian questions, and he's super helpful and responsive. And as you're trying to scale an organization, Dadrian is only one person. He's got a lot of other things on his list. Dadrian, may leave the organization at some point. So where does that knowledge go? And the other kind of key constraint is it's easy for me, Brian, to ask Dadrian when I have a question. These fields look similar. Which one should I use? AI, LLMs, they're not so context-based where they know to ask the question. They will evaluate the data of the 5 available fields and they'll pick the best one confidently and with a lot of positive energy, and then go make decisions or create analytics and expose that to other people or to other agents to do things. And so That knowledge in Dadrian's head doesn't scale and really breaks down as we get into the critical context for AI. And maybe just a couple of quick examples that are probably real world for folks that are on the line here. And so you have um, a set of fields, and I don't. So you have a set of fields: annual revenue, ARR, email address. If we're getting ready to do initiative, I go say look in Salesforce and I make my reports and I pick the field that I want. Or I may go ask Dadrian, what annual revenue field should I pull for this set of reports to the board? And I can do that one-on-one. And Dadrian, how might you answer that question? Like, what are the things that you would do?
Well, typically, and I have sat down with countless Salesforce admins, from different industries, and kind of listen to horror stories about, what their data currently looks like and compared to what they want it to look like. And generally, the approach starts with, manually pulling, metadata from tools like Workbench or Salesforce Inspector, and then I kind of look at API names, field types, formula dependencies, stuff like that. And I try to, just one object at a time, uh, just to keep the scope manageable. Um, just really prioritize objects like account, lead, opportunity, and just start there. Prioritize and try to go from there would be where I'd start.
Yeah, 100%. And it's really one-off at that point. So if we have the two emails, Dadrian knows in his head which email address we should be using for marketing. But I didn't know that, and I'm the one creating the sequences of the reports. And if you choose the wrong one, that could have really detrimental effect because you're affecting customers, brand, maybe compliance or other audit requirements. And so when you've added that, so you ask that same question, which field should I use? When you have context, there's critical additional information that one makes me not have to ask Dadrian every time, but also makes it possible for the LLMs and AIs that don't know to ask Dadrian, maybe don't know that Dadrian exists, which fields that they should be using. And so on the left-hand side here, you see again two revenue fields. The revenue field we should use for sales territory segmentation is annual revenue. How do we know that? Because that's defined in the definition. We can also see if we were going to make changes to those fields, who's affected, because we see the stakeholders, sales and finance on both of those fields. And similarly, if we were to deprecate those fields, we would know, we could proactively identify what's the impact of that and make sure that we don't deprecate a field that's critical for billing because of the finance implications. Versus on the far right-hand side, with an email address, the same thing. We have a couple of email addresses, which is the field we should be using for marketing, and we can see clearly based on the definition that it's only the email address, not personal email. And why not? Because the compliance category for personal email is GDPR, actually for both of them, but for the personal email is GDPR, so that's not the one that we choose to use. And this knowledge that, again, it's in Dadrian's head or your Salesforce admin's head, or maybe your heads, because there's a lot of owners on the call here today, taking this and putting it in a format that's consumable by others, humans and machines, is critical in some fashion or another. So why don't we look at, so that's kind of why to solve the problem. And if you don't solve this problem now, your AI starts, projects that are stalling are going to continue to do that. So why don't we go through the alternatives, Dadrian? If we go through kind of old school, SharePoint, Excel, modern, and maybe we jump one more slide. Like what is the build your own approach, look like, and what are you hearing, and how should one approach it if they want to do it, on their own?
Right. So the main the big difference, when you're talking about the new automated ways, you just take a platform, connects to the org, and you get to auto-populate, your dictionary with metadata directly. And this is typically taking, just minutes instead of months. And you can cover, hundreds of different fields at once instead of, 15 to 20 terms per sprint. That's kind of realistically feasible for a human team. And one of the main differences is kind of where the plain language definitions actually come from, right? So manually, you have to sit down with the domain stakeholders and the business analysts, right? And you kind of have to translate technical field names into the business definitions and the source origins and all kinds of underlying logic. And it can be quite difficult to capture, and it's very easy to lose track of, right? So you'll take an automated tool that just kind of generates a first pass definition from the metadata and usage patterns, yeah, with AI, and you just really need a human to kind of confirm or edit rather than just authoring all of that stuff from scratch. And how the ownership is actually tracked. There's a big difference between the old school way and new now, because the manual approach, you're going to use something resembling like the project management RACI approach, right? Where someone's responsible, accountable. You need a consultant, someone who's like an expert or a key opinion leader to let uh, what we're considering the one source of truth, and then an informant, someone who's just kind of tracking progress and not really putting input into all of this, right? So with that approach, there's a specific human owner per object or domain, right? And they're responsible for really resolving any ambiguity, which is typically the right idea, but it breaks down in practice, right? So as people change roles, as admins turn over, who owns this field? It slowly just becomes tribal knowledge, within 6 months to a year. So we use, your automated system, and it's going to keep ownership, attached to a live record, so it surfaces on demand, who owns annual revenue, instead of, depending on someone to fill and check a roster. And these sorts of things are key. Who's how are changes tracked over time, right? So you'll have a manual change log, someone who's maintaining history of who altered the definition and when they did it, review it on some given cadence, due to a sprint, or we're going to do this weekly or monthly. And that it's generally accurate, as long as you have someone dependable assigned to, logging changes. Whereas you'll take an automated tool and it's detecting metadata changes as they happen in the org in real time, and it just updates the dictionary continuously. There's never really any lag between, reality and documentation. Yeah, so um, one thing we like to say is you don't want AI running amok in your org. But again, a human is steadily monitoring and approving and editing, these AI updates, right? Um,
Yeah, and Dadrian, I think you hit on I don't I like the way that you worded it. It's never the concept. Like, so folks have, you may have folks on the line here that are the owners that have had, data catalog or dictionary efforts in the past. And typically it's based on a release. Maybe you had a release that went out, thought you had all the right components, turned it on, and it broke things. And it was like, oh, the business couldn't run, users couldn't do what they were expected to do. Maybe with some data integrations and data flows to different departments that was painful, right? That breakage can be painful when you put something in production and something unintended breaks. And so where we've seen a lot of times the way you described it is the practice is, yeah, we'll do a data dictionary, we'll catalog everything, and we'll get it into accurate, and they'll do it right after that release that was that really had negative impact to the business. And then in practice say, oh yeah, we'll keep this up to date, and we'll maintain it as new fields come out, and the mechanics of the process from a practical standpoint just aren't there. They don't work. And all of a sudden the next release goes out. The degree of accuracy of that catalog is 70%, as accurate as it was the first time. And then it's 50%, and then it's 20%. A year later, you're back down to 10% accuracy and no one believes it. So I'm going to ask Dadrian every time. And
Hmm.
again, your AI and LLMs don't ask Dadrian. They just go do things and make decisions because that's what they're designed to do.
Yeah, and Brian was talking about that MIT research, the study that came out. We actually had an internal case study following, one particular client that had implemented Arovy Smart Data Dictionary, and we followed them over 6 months and found that their team was able to free up over 20 man hours a month. And it's just the fact that maintaining a spreadsheet-based data dictionary is it's just very costly uh, in terms of time and obviously time translate over into dollars. So, um, that 20 hours a month was just steady state upkeep. That's not the initial build, which, can take months for a mid-sized org. And even if, you have a smaller org, typically you'll have less people working on it. So it ends up being about the same. And then if you're an enterprise company, it could easily be two, three, sometimes even five times, that effort. So when maintenance is automated, it's really minimal effort once your data dictionary is set up. So
100%. 100%. And we do have a couple questions. We've got about 5 minutes left. So if you haven't inputted your question as of yet, now would be a good time. Although again, Dadrian's on LinkedIn, I'm on LinkedIn. We've got a website and you can email us. We're here to help any way that we can after. And maybe I'll just real quick high level in terms of our approach. Our approach is, addresses some of the key challenges with the manual approach, as maybe you would expect. Essentially, we start with capturing as much business context as we can from your organization, from your documents, FAQs, other constituents. We add that context and along with all the metadata, and we automatically generate definitions and context based on that information that then you review and validate. And obviously, the more context that can be provided in advance, the smarter our first loads will be. But also that context is things that you can append over time. And so as that knowledge gets increased, or as you understand the things that are in your head that are really important, you just keep adding that context and the engine gets smarter specific to your organization. And then you're able to interact with that through obviously through chatbot and then also through MCP experiences as you see fit. I'll just take maybe a couple of questions. 4 minutes left. First question here, Dadrian. How much of the data dictionary needs to be completed before it can be used? So, yeah.
um, you you can use it from day one. If you have an automated data dictionary, very similar to the traditional manual methods. If you start with, the important objects. And again, we're talking account, lead, opportunity, things like that. You can get those documented, and then you just build from there. So the the definitions, the documentation that people are going to most regularly, it's there, it's live, it's usable, and it's dependable. And you build it out and get more and more of your data documented over time. But as soon as you get going, this is useful work. And I know from our tool, we have a dynamic link. So as you build out the data dictionary, hey, copy this link, send it to people that aren't even necessarily Arovy users. And as that data dictionary is built out, that link and what they can see in business context, business language, um, they can see that and use that in real time.
100%. Yeah, and I think there's a fallacy that that has to be 100% completed. And the reality is you start with your most important objects, the most important fields, and make sure that those are completed and approve those to be accessible by for your efforts, and then build off of there based on priorities over time.
Exactly.
And we have 2 minutes. We'll take one more question, and we will follow up with everyone. All the other what happens when owner of domain leaves company? How do you manage track changes of this kind? So maybe this is like object owners, Dadrian, like are you able, how would you do maintenance of people leaving the company or stakeholders leaving the company?
Well, how we handle it, it's again, the automation is detecting changes. So as someone leaves, w- we're looking at the live logs of ownership. This is the person changing it. So that's kind of another one of the benefits of using the automated tool. As people leave, and you're trying to maintain spreadsheets, you need to actively fill in, hey, whoever was taking responsibility, ownership of this task before, we need to fill that in, or there's going to be a major gap. With the Arovy tool, this is going to continue to get flagged, continue to get updated, and someone just really just has to approve it, update it, which that notification will be there, and you won't lose track of it.
Amazing. So we just, Dadrian, thank you so much for joining and sharing your expertise. Thanks for the audience, and hopefully you got some, at least a couple of nuggets that will help you make progress. Connect with us on LinkedIn if you're interested in this topic and want to learn more. And for all the questions that we didn't specifically get to, we'll have Rhea follow up and make sure that we're supporting you best that we can. And with
Absolutely.
that, everyone enjoy, have a great rest of the day, and we'll connect again soon. All right, be good.